Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to Inside Golf, presented by Susquehanna Wealth Management. I'm Harry Donahue, today at the USGA headquarters, specifically at the Research and Test Center here in Far Hills, New Jersey, as we begin 2 weeks of shows looking at what conforms and doesn't conform when it comes to your game of golf, and not just yours, but touring pros as well. We'll take a look at what the USGA considers as a conforming, say, ball and club, or non-conforming same. It's all part of the next 2 weeks of Inside Golf from Far Hills, New Jersey, and the Research and Test Center of the USGA. Back in a moment with Inside Golf, presented by Susquehanna Wealth Management. Inside Golf, presented by Susquehanna Wealth Management, doing what counts. And by the Philadelphia Section PGA, experts in the game and business of golf.
Honey, what are all these cash rewards?
Stellar Checking with Smart Rewards. We earn cash on check card purchases and when we transfer money from our Stellar Checking into our savings account.
Cool. How should we spend them?
Stellar. Stellar.
Stellar!
Probably groceries.
Stellar Checking from Susquehanna Bank. Earn cash rewards whether you're spending or saving. Member FDIC.
And welcome back to Inside Golf, presented by Susquehanna Wealth Management. We're in Far Hills, New Jersey at the USGA headquarters, where they tell you what you can and can't use when it comes to things like golf clubs and golf balls. And here's the guy that makes all the decisions. Well, he's at the top of the ladder. John Spitzer is the managing director for equipment standards for the USGA. And John, in a nutshell, I don't want to say 30 words or less, but in a nice, concise way, explain what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, everybody plays with different clubs and balls, and there's all kinds of manufacturers, and what we do is they send them to us, and we make sure they conform to the rules of golf that are spelled out in 4 and 5 in your rule book.
Would it be basic to say that what you're trying to do is make it a level playing field for everybody, so that one person doesn't have a piece of equipment, be it a club or a ball or a shoe or whatever, that maybe gives them an edge over everybody else?
Well, you're spot on that, Harry. What we do is we want to make sure skill is the driving force on who's successful in a game, whether it's our own national championship or whether it's you and I playing for a beer. We want to make sure it's the guy or the gal with the most skill that wins that event, not the one who plunked down $1,000 for a piece of equipment that corrects his slice or makes him hit a 300-yard drive.
How long has the USGA been in the business of calling the shots, having these equipment standards?
We've had equipment standards for many, many years. In fact, we have equipment that we've actually ruled on since 1934. It's gotten much more busy of late with all the designs and the new technology and equipment, so things have gone up considerably. We used to have a couple of pieces of equipment back in the 30s, and now we're getting roughly 2,500 per year that we look at, and that doesn't even count golf balls.
Now, I know you've been with the USGA for almost 20 years. You've been in this current job for, what, a little more than a year.
Right.
And prior to that, though, you had sort of an academic background, would it be safe to say?
Well, I'm an engineer by trade, went to Villanova locally, and after I graduated with my master's degree, I went up and worked on nuclear submarines for 8 years.
Nuclear submarines?
Right, underwater shock analysis to see how they would survive depth charges. And then after that, I moved down to New Jersey, and my wife and I took the family there, and I worked at Princeton University in their plasma physics lab for almost 9 years doing nuclear fusion research.
It almost seems like you're overqualified for this job. I mean, you know, teaching at Princeton and then also working on nuclear submarines, and now you're playing around with golf balls and clubs.
You know, it's lucky. I'll tell you, I'm lucky. I don't know that I'm overqualified, but the thing that's interesting that a lot of people don't understand, it's all physics. You know, the same physics that make a submarine go underwater, that create particles that join and release energy, are the same kind of physics that create a spin on your golf ball when you hit it with a driver.
And the thing is, now you have big money involved in equipment. You know, it seems like every year manufacturers come out with, you know, a better mousetrap, for want of a better term. They're going to give you extra yardage. Maybe they're going to give you a less spin, more spin, whatever the case may be, and the same with balls and everything else when it comes to equipment in golf. So there's a lot of money involved, based on the decisions that you make.
Absolutely. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the manufacturers are trying to suit their customers, give them the best they can, and we're trying to make sure that they play within the rules and the skills the driving factor. So we kind of walk this tightrope between the two of us and have a bit of a détente, and I think we're both working for the good of the golfer and the game in general. Sometimes we don't always see eye to eye, but in general, what we're trying to do is make sure that the golfer has the best thing, but still maintains the challenge of the game.
Now, you're the managing director of Equipment Standards. How large a staff do you have?
It's 16 in this building that deal with the equipment, and we have basically 6 engineers, a handful, 3 technicians, we have some administrative staff, and we also have a lawyer who administers the actual rules and deals with the manufacturers and their submissions.
Now, of the 16, including yourself, are there specialists, like some deal just with equipment in terms of golf clubs, say irons vis-a-vis a driver, and metal wood, and some with balls only, or does it interchange?
Well, it's interchangeable because we're relatively small staff. If you were to look at us with 6 engineers dealing with all the manufacturers submitting golf clubs and compare that to the engineers at a TaylorMade or a Callaway, you'd say, wow, that's just a small percentage of what they have in their technology arsenal. So we all wear up multiple hats, but we do have specialties. One of our engineers, Steve Quinovala, he specializes in the golf ball, and other engineers will specialize in golf clubs and how they, the COR and the spring-like effect and how they create spin, that kind of stuff. But we all wear multiple hats.
Is there a typical background, say, in terms of professional training for members of your staff? That like you, a lot of them engineers?
Yeah, they're all engineers. We don't have any physicists. So the scientists that we have on are basically engineers, mechanical engineers.
Okay.
3 of them are PhDs.
How many have, you know how like in law you have guys that work for years as a prosecutor, and then after maybe 10, 15 years, they get a career change. All of a sudden, they're a defense attorney. I'm curious, are there people that maybe started out working for equipment companies and came here, or started here and went there?
There's only one person that basically has ever come from an equipment company and worked here, and that was Dick Ruggie, and he retired last year. The rest of us, everyone who's working here now, all came from different parts of engineering. We had a fellow from GE, our youngest engineer, worked for in NASCAR and race cars for a while. We have years ago had an engineer that left and went on to Titleist and other companies, but in general, we're kind of free from the golf industry when we get here.
And you mentioned Dick Ruggie. Now, you took Dick's place.
Yes, I did.
And he got his own name up here on a piece of equipment, the Iron Ruggie 2000. And this replaced what a lot of people, I think, were familiar with, the old Iron Byron, which was a mechanical, well, for want of a better word, a mechanical golfer used to test up here.
You're exactly right, Harry, and we had the mechanical golfer Iron Byron for many years, and he was modeled after Iron Byron's swing. The thing is that as time went on, the swing speeds of the best players, the players on the PGA Tour, kept getting faster and faster and faster, and the Iron Byron was limited to about 110 miles per hour.
You couldn't get him any higher than that?
higher enough. We had to retire.
It'd blow up. Iron Byron would blow up.
So we had to give him his Rolex watch and bring in a young stud that's a little bit more heavyweight as far as hitting the ball far.
And Iron Ruggie gets up to what miles per hour?
The Iron Ruggie could go up over 130, but we don't typically test more than 120. The average swing speed on the PGA Tour is 113 miles per hour.
About 113. What is it for the amateur, a good amateur golfer?
It's probably in the high 90s.
Okay. And it goes anywhere from there down for high handicappers.
That's exactly right. It varies all over the place. And there's some guys on the PGA Tour that are relatively slow in the swing speed. You might have a guy like a Brian Gay or a Corey Pavin who's just over 100, things like that. And there's other guys like Bubba Watson and Robert Garrigus who are up in the high 120s. So,
do manufacturers basically have either in front of them in a book or wherever a history of knowing what they have to do to get everything to conform, and then do they in any way kind of shape things a little bit differently, hoping that you guys will kind of give them a wink and a nod and say, well, okay, this is all right?
Well, they can hope all they want, but that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Okay,
but you're right. They all do. Most of this equipment, every manufacturer will have something very similar, if not the exact thing. And what they do, and we work very, very closely with them, is they'll test product, and then they'll send it to us and we'll test the same product to make sure that as they go through their development phase, they're getting the results that they would expect when they finally do submit it for conformance. Because it's not good for anyone if you're investing a lot of money to design a new driver that might cost $500. It's not good to actually get that in and find out after you've put a lot of money in that it doesn't conform. So we work very closely with both club and ball manufacturers.
You know, I'm old enough, I'm sure you are too, to remember the old Persimmon drivers, and now they look basically like a rescue club compared to the club heads that we see now for drivers and 3 woods or whatever, 3 metals. Was that one of the biggest changes in terms of, you know, taking it from here to here, with the development of the metal wood and then the large head?
Yes, that was one of the big ones. There's a few of them that come with both clubs and balls, and size was one of the ones that we kind of missed the boat a little bit. I think we were all lulled into the thought that when they came out with the Great Big Bertha that it would never get any bigger, because there was a time when the club head size had gone up to about the Great Big Bertha and then it steadied out. But then lo and behold, with titanium, that really drove, well, although the Great Big Bertha was a titanium, but as it became more workable and cheaper, that really drove the size way up. And that's why we put a limit in place.
So I guess that's what I'm saying. Why did you allow the Big Bertha, for instance? After all those years of having, you know, relatively small club head size, all of a sudden this thing is like 2 or 3 times bigger than what it used to be.
It certainly looked a little bit bigger, and we had done some testing and evaluation of when they first came out with the Pittsburgh Persimmon, the old TaylorMade, and we didn't notice any performance enhancements from that. And when we looked at the size of the club head, we thought it might be good for the game of golf for golfers who are intimidated off the tee shot to have a little bit bigger head to aim for, or to use when they aim for striking the ball. And so at that point, we figured we had reached the limit on what they were going to design for size. We were incorrect, but so we decided we'd let that go, figuring we'd already asymptoted to that level. And then lo and behold, it got bigger and bigger, and we said, oh, we'll better draw a line on that, and we'll make it 460, 460 cc.
And do you foresee in the future that limit being stretched a little bit, or do you think it's maxed out?
No, we put that limit in about 10 years ago. And we think that at this point, they're not going to make anything bigger, and there's not really necessarily any benefit to making it bigger. With a modern driver, we're fairly close to what the moment of inertia, which is the resistance to twist. One of the benefits of the large club head is that if you hit it off the toe, it won't twist as much, so you get a much better shot. I think we've all experienced the difference between hitting on the toe on a persimmon wood and a modern wood. And when you get to the moment of inertia, which really controls that, the modern club head is about the limit where it's not going to get you much more even if you got it a little bit bigger. So there's not really a real good scientific reason to go large either.
Stay with us. A lot more to come from the USGA's Research and Test Center on Inside Golf, presented by Susquehanna Wealth Management.
At this moment, across the country, families are packing their bags for a getaway. And no matter where they end up, they'll all be home by dinner. Plan your own at playgolfamerica.com. From finding fun and affordable programs to finding advice from PGA and LPGA professionals, playgolfamerica.com has a way for you to get away. Visit today for details. playgolfamerica.com, your link to the game.
This device is dedicated totally to golf ball testing. So that particular club was swung at 119.8 miles per hour. We set it for 120, and then of course there's all small variations. If it's plus or minus a mile an hour, we're okay with it.
So these 2 monitors here that we have, tell me exactly what they're recording and how's that help you decide conformity, non-conformity?
Harry, when we're testing a golf ball for the conformance to the overall distance standard, actually how far it travels on a drive, what we do is we strike it with a modern titanium driver, albeit a little small, but we're hitting it on the sweet spot, so it doesn't matter. And then what we're going to do is we line up the ball with a line. All of our golf balls will have a line on them. And then what we'll do is we'll line that towards our launch monitor. This launch monitor is not dissimilar to what you might experience if you go through club fitting with one of your local club pros. As that ball travels through the air, and we'll let Eric hit one for us and get some actual data for you.
Okay, within seconds now we have the data.
We have the data, that's right. And what you see is that line that I was just speaking about, it started out at this angle, and then as it goes by to this next camera, it's rotated that much. We know how much time was between these two snapshots.
And
so
how much of a distance was there between
about
the cameras?
4 inches.
That's all. So it
4
changed
inches.
that much.
That's right, in 4 inches. And so
based on that,
we can get the spin. And by how much it went up, we can get the angle, and how far it traveled, we knew the cameras are for, and we know the time between the snapshots, we can get the speed. That tells us exactly what happens to the golf ball when it comes off the club. Now the club and the ball are only in contact for a very, very short time, 450 microseconds. That's 0.00045 seconds. And so it's important to take these measurements right away, because you can make we both know we can make a tremendous amount of problems for ourselves in that little 450 microseconds if we don't hit it properly.
all right, John, we've moved over here in the laboratory to another device. What exactly does this do?
This is our indoor test range. We call it the ITR. We're big on acronyms. And after we test the golf ball with the club head to see how it comes off the driver, in order to determine how far it travels, we actually have to figure out what's going on in the air. So this is our equivalent to the golf ball air wind tunnel testing. So we fire a golf ball through the air as opposed to drawing the wind over a plane or a car. So we fire golf balls at 15 different combinations of speed and spin. So we get a dozen golf balls in 2 different orientations, and then we determine, based on knowing what its trajectory is through this short 70-foot tunnel, we can determine how far it travels with 1% accuracy. That's 3 yards on a 300-yard drive.
You know, I guess the question that comes to my mind is all the manufacturers, they know the restrictions. I mean, but every year they come out with a different type of golf ball, and they know it can't go too far because you'll place restrictions on that and spin and everything else. What more can they do? I mean, what are they working on?
Sure, they're always trying to make better products for the consumer too. They're not going to be able to make a golf ball that's going to go a lot further for Bubba Watson, but they can do a lot of things that'll help you and I and other consumers have a better performance, whether it matches their swing speed better or their launch conditions better with more or less spin depending on how you hit it. We do have a limit on the distance for the best players, but that doesn't mean that others who are swinging at smaller speeds can't gain something from new technology.
Okay, so it's important that maybe a lot of their research and a lot of what they're trying to do isn't to help the touring pro hit the ball further. It's to help the average golfer,
that's
the weekend guy,
that's who's
get a
paying,
little more
that's who's
distance.
paying for the golf balls right now.
Yeah, because Bubba Watson's not
I don't know
taking
that
it in his
Tiger
pocket.
actually bought a dozen balls in the recent past, but the idea is that we have most of our limits that we put on equipment are really based on the highest level of performance, and that allows the manufacturers to have a tremendous amount of design space to help you and I and the average consumer.
You obviously see the changes that they make year to year, and which company is doing a better job in that performance enhancement for the average golfer.
Thanks, Harry. You're trying to get me in trouble, aren't you?
Sure, that's why we came
They're
here.
all wonderful. We have great relationships with them, and part of the fun, play around with different equipment. If you've always liked ball brand A, try ball brand B. You might find out that, hey, I like this even better.
So that's
part of the magic.
That's as close as I'm going to get to a hint that yes, there may actually be a difference when it comes to golf balls.
You're not going to get it from me.
Well, among the things I learned here at the test center is that a tailor-made 99 ball, you know who hits this? Last year's winner of the US Open at Merion, Justin Rose. 99. I hear his favorite hockey player was Wayne Gretzky.
When you step out, make sure you go all in. Because at Valley Forge Casino Resort, we're rolling out the action. And we'll bring it all to the table. So take us for a spin and go all in for the win. Valley Forge Casino Resort. It's safe, it's chic, and only a shuffle away from the main line.
Guests of Teed Off receive gift certificates to any of the 8 restaurants at Valley Forge Casino at King of Prussia.
Not to mention the fact that there's sort of an emotional letdown that you're finishing up with this golf course.
And welcome back. Inside Golf continues here at the Valley Forge Casino Pacific Prime Restaurant, specifically, as we have our Teed Off panel with us today. And Jim Smith Jr., Director of Golf from Philadelphia Cricket Club is here. So is Joe Logan. He of PhillyGolf.com, myPhillyGolf.com. Get the whole title right, Harry. And Bob Shepard, known author, golf professional, bon vivant, whatever you want to call him. Shep usually will answer the bell. Good to see you, Shep.
Good to see you, Harry.
Here's the topic for today, guys. We're going to be talking about what are the most interesting and or most difficult 18th holes, and it could be more than one, obviously, in the Philadelphia area for you. And Jim, I know you have a couple at Philadelphia Cricket Club. I'm not going to bar you from mentioning those or including those, but give me a sample maybe of some other interesting and difficult 18th holes in the district.
I got to be a homer. I mean, most people that you talk to would tell you that one of the the best and most interesting and hardest all wrapped into one is the 18th hole at Wissahickon.
At Wissahickon, right.
When we reopen after our restoration in late May, that hole will play almost 500 yards as a par 4. So.
And some would say, but the second shot's downhill, right?
It's downhill, but it's still a hard shot.
The layup shot for a lot of people. It's downhill.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of difficult shots, I mean, I thought about this a little bit, and I think, and they're the two biggest named courses in Philadelphia, but 18 at Marion and 18 at Pine Valley are just two unbelievably difficult holes. Not to mention the fact that they're sort of an emotional letdown that you're finishing up at those golf courses, that you actually have to leave the property because they're so great. But if you're in a match and you got to make a par, or God forbid have to birdie one of those holes, good luck. And in terms of interesting, and I thought about that in the sense of, what would be an interesting hole in a match? And what jumps out at me is actually 18 at Lanark. It's
short hole.
It's a short hole. There's a million different ways to play it. The green is brutal. I mean, I've seen guys drive the ball on that green. I've seen guys make 8 from 40 yards away. It just strikes me as a really cool finishing hole. Not because it's overly difficult or overly spectacular, it just is a great hole for a match.
And to think they played the 1958 PGA Championship at Lanark, 4 times on that 18th hole. Dal Finsterwald, of course, was the winner.
Yeah.
That was the first year, Shep, as you recall.
Medal.
They did not play match play, they went to medal play.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
How
exciting.
about your most interesting and most difficult
I'll go with
holes?
Jimmy. We always measure things in 475 par 4 uphill into the wind, fast green, blah blah blah. Some of the great holes like Lanark is the shorter holes, even like at Ballard and things like that. There's some golf holes in Philadelphia that are spectacular. One of them I was very fortunate to be at was Sandy Run Country Club. 18th hole at Sandy Run. Yardage is 330 or something, not that much. A little dog leg to the right, little subtle boundary on the right, a big tree, and a brush on the left and trees. So the hole's not that difficult, but when you play a tournament there and you're coming up the 18th hole, there's a factor there when you want to drive it past the tree to make sure you get an open shot to the green. Yet an iron is the real play. Well, an iron is going to be tough for most people to get past the tree, so that's an issue. And I know when we used to set it up for the George Hofner Memorial, we used to put the tee forward instead of back, and it would make the hole so difficult. Everybody would complain. The Dave Brookersons, the greatest players in Philadelphia, would come in and say, "Why did you move that tee up? We couldn't play the hole." And the reason is because all of a sudden it tempts you to get up around the tree with a driver, which makes it more difficult. So anyhow, one of the best holes in finishing in competition in Philadelphia, I think, year in, year out, is the 18th at Sandy Run. Of course, it's the one I've played the most, too, so I have a little bit of revere for it. But well worth trying and a lot of fun, too. It's a birdie hole, too, if you can play the hole correctly.
Joe, you're well-traveled.
I am. I have to echo what Jim said and what Bob said. I can't believe they're going to make the Cricket Club 18 longer. It was already unfair, it was so hard. But I will throw in 2 more that you don't hear much about. They get no love, but I think they deserve to be part of the conversation. First is the 18th at White Marsh Valley, which is a very nice par 5, 3-shotter, elevated green with a nice green. And the other one is, of course, the Jim is very familiar with because he used to be the pro there. Mm-hmm. Tullamore. It's a nice 3-shot par 5 with one of the most unusual, impossible greens you've ever seen. It's got a green about the size of Montgomery County that's got more undulations than Zsa Zsa Gabor. And
let me think about that, Joe. Are you sure? I thought Zsa Zsa had all the undulations in the world.
The boa.
But the hardest one is the Cricket Club, where I tell you what, I mean, what stands out in my mind about that hole is here you come down in matches to the last hole, and it's the only course I know where matches are often won with a double bogey on the last hole.
Wow. You know, another hole that's similar to Talamore, only it's not a par 5, it's a par 4, and it's a little bit south of the region, is Bully Rock. Bully Rock's a great 18th hole. They have the water up there on the left side, and Talamore has a little bit of a pond.
Tarsdale.
Tarsdale.
Great 18.
And for short 18s, Bob, and I'm surprised, I thought you were going to go there, you know? I mean, I know you got your Sandy Run, and I got my North Hills roots. North Hills isn't a box of chocolates.
No,
if you need to make par to win a hole or to win a golf tournament.
That's right.
All of a sudden,
That's one reason they invented whiskey, the 18th at North Hills.
glad you said
like
that,
my
Shep.
book says.
It's always a pleasure. Bob Shepard, Joe Logan, Jim Smith Jr. Most interesting and most difficult 18th holes. I'm sure you have your own list. Maybe some of these were on it. Thanks for joining us. Inside Golf continues with more in just a moment. The Valley Forge Casino Resort is the region's only full amenity gaming resort, and it's only seconds from the Pennsylvania Turnpike at King of Prussia. It features 600 slots, 50 table games, plus 8 restaurants designed to meet all of your dining needs. So put the beautiful Valley Forge Casino Resort on your destination list.
Free enterprise is the engine that drives our economy. Everyday businesses, big and small, work to make life better for their customers and a better life for themselves. Susquehanna knows successful businesses need a strong financial partner, someone who can help keep your business running at peak efficiency. The people of Susquehanna Bank, doing what counts for businesses like yours. Member FDIC.
Well, welcome back. We're going to wrap up our segment number 1, actually, from the USGA's Test Center with John Spitzer. And John, we are in a vault-like room. It has a lot of boxes with notations on them. What's inside these boxes?
These are golf balls that we've tested in previous years. One of these rows, which is 2 deep, is a single-year submission. So we're talking over 25,000 golf balls here. Some of these are made by manufacturers from the U.S. as a Callaway golf ball. Some of these are made from manufacturers outside of the U.S. Bridgestone's a Japanese ball. They do have also some U.S. golf balls.
What percentage of balls are rejected and non-conforming in the course of an average year?
It's only about 2%. It's a very small number. And so most of the manufacturers, with the help of doing some testing in conjunction with us, are getting really good at making balls that conform.
They know what makes you guys happy, huh?
Well, or what makes us mad.
Hey, John, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
We
appreciate you guys taking the time.
We looked at golf balls this week. Next week, we'll be back here in Far Hills at the Test Center with John, and we'll take a look at things like grips and also clubs, both irons, and looking at drivers and how things have changed over the years and what conforms and what doesn't conform. For John Spitzer, I'm Harry Donahue. Hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Inside Golf. And remember, no matter how bad it's going for you out there, don't pick up and make sure your equipment conforms. I know John would like that. See you next week on Inside Golf, presented by Susquehanna Wealth Management. Inside Golf, presented by Susquehanna Wealth Management, doing what counts. And by the Philadelphia Section PGA, experts in the game and business of golf.